Hi, I'm
No
Sarah from The
problem.
Upcoming. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to speak to you today about this really unique and sort of heartwarming and very special documentary. Maybe for people who don't know anything about it, you can give a brief introduction to Million Dollar Pigeons.
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, the name, the kind of description is in the title. It's about the world of high stakes pigeon racing, um, featuring characters from all over the world, who are kind of chasing the same dream. They all want to make it in this. Yeah, it is a niche, underground world. But for them, it's everything, and so it's sort of centered around the very competitive high end um, international pigeon races, and also the influx of money into what was is a new thing in that industry. It used to be very much a cottage industry, and now it's you have pigeons selling for nearly 2 million quid. So it's this it was an exciting time to tell the story.
And it kind of perhaps doesn't seem like the most likely of subjects, considering I did a documentary about Conor McGregor and Liam Gallagher. So, what was your route into this? I understand your dad kind of knew one of these pigeon financiers. No, what's the word? Fancier. Fancier.
Fancier, yeah. It's a
Fancier,
great word.
sorry. Financier, fancier. But, how did you kind of meet them for the first time and think, wow, this is actually a really good subject for a documentary?
Yeah, I guess you're always looking for new topics, and yeah, I just kind of wanted to make something different. From my last films being about bigger celebrities, as you mentioned, so I wanted to try new waters, and maybe work with people who the ego didn't come with it or whatever. But that's not to say it doesn't exist in all walks of life, and in pigeons as well. But yeah, my dad actually just introduced me to a pigeon fancier one time, and I was having conversations with them, and I just got sucked into the world, and I went to the local pigeon club, which there is one that exists probably near you, they're all around the world. So I went in there, and I was talking to all the characters there, and one of them told me about this race in South Africa called the Million Dollar Pigeon Race, which hosts international pigeon fanciers from all over the world, where they compete for like 2 million in prize money. And for me, that sounded like the kind of the concept that could glue this whole thing together. So I went out to South Africa, met the people out there, kind of built the access, and yeah, just kind of grew wings from there. We got funding, from Screen Ireland, and we had Dogwoof as a sales agent early on, working with Venom Films, our production company. So yeah, it was just a team effort to kind of, people liked the concept, and they liked the characters in the world. I love the humor of the whole pigeon racing thing. It's a lot of men arguing about pigeons. That for me was something that always put a smile on my face, still does. So yeah, I thought that there was a really good story in it, and it's just, there's never a dull day in pigeons. It's just dramatic things happen, and there's twists and turns in the film that you wouldn't expect, and that's just because it's just a cutthroat sport.
And I guess once you choose your kind of subject area with a documentary, the work really begins on capturing all the information, and then in the editing process deciding what goes into the final documentary. So what was your kind of approach on this? And I guess through your research and meeting all these people, these particular characters start to emerge, and so how did you decide on who you included in the final documentary?
Yeah, I'd say casting was probably the longest process for this. We spoke to a lot of people all around the world, because we wanted to make it feel like not just a local film, something that international audiences can enjoy. And there really is, like, pigeon racing is huge in all these different random areas. So it was just trying to figure out this web, and how we kind of make sense of it, and pick the right characters that both like reflect the industry, and you know, it can also give us different arcs and different types of personalities. So yeah, we really just, it was a case of you know, using Zoom to reach out to people across the world, doing interviews with them, and ultimately kind of narrowing it down to a few and following their journeys. And then, you know, then a pandemic hits and it makes everything complicated, and we had to shoot half the film remotely. You know, I didn't go to Thailand in the making of this film because I literally couldn't. But we had a, you know, a good portion of the film out there, so I'd be doing the interviews via Zoom, and we'd have a crew that side of the world. So a new way of making them. It's not something that's as enjoyable, but it does work. So just kind of pulled it off. But yeah, we also spent a lot of time in the edit room. Andrew Hearn is the name of our editor, who's really great to work with. And you know, we there's so many combinations of structures we had out, and just kind of, yeah, you know, if you remove one scene, suddenly it just doesn't work as well. And it's watching it lots and lots of times was probably the thing that helped us the most.
And who for you did you kind of most capture, you know, your imagination when you're speaking to them, or stand out to you? I mean, it feels very heartwarming to see, you know, John O'Brien and kind of, you know, his passion for it, you know, and then maybe Sarah Blackshaw almost maybe emerges a bit of the villain. So you kind of have these, you know, these characters like you would have in kind of a fiction film, but even though it's a documentary.
Yeah, no, it's hard to find villains in documentaries. Actually, it's like something I was after, and yeah, you know, kind of got you know, a little bit lucky there, in the sense that we found our Cruella de Vil of the pigeon world. So yeah, I don't want to give too much away, but she was interesting to deal with. You know, I like dealing with you know, all sorts of different people. You know, the very different types of personalities. You know, you mentioned probably the main character in the film, the guy who probably has the most screen time and drives the narrative is John, and he's an Irish guy who lives nearby me. And yeah, he just has he's a, you know, he almost has like ADHD. He's just very wired and has a lot of energy. And I think the pigeons really help him kind of calm him to a degree. So yeah, but he has a big heart as well. And I think it was nice to kind of follow somebody who, you know, doesn't have a lot in terms of money, and is trying to compete against these guys who have it all. So yeah, this kind of like an underscore of, I suppose, capitalism brought into the pigeon world, and how it kind of squeezes out the little man. So yeah, but I have a lot of time for all the characters we have in the film. They're all really nice to work with. You know, despite it being always you know, tricky to get a hold of them and whatever else. They don't, like, some of them don't even have mobile phones. It's old school, you know. It's like call the landline and ask for them, and they'll be in the loft. And so it's like going back in time.
And of course, you know, in deciding what to include as well, you know, you've got this great balance of, I guess, sort of educating, you know, the viewer who perhaps know nothing about this world, and, you know, how it works, and the racing, and the vets, and, you know, the quarantining process, and all this, that, and the other, but then also leaning into the comedy and the drama and the characters. So was it important for you to kind of get the balance of those different things?
Yeah, I guess, like, I think probably the hardest thing to get in a documentary is a really good laugh. You know, it can be quite serious subject matter a lot of the time, and I like making an audience laugh. And I saw that, you know, Dog Wolf, when they put it on their on demand service now, they have it in the comedy section, and I think that's kind of funny. So yeah, the comedy was the warmth was important to me. And but you know, I like to inject energy into films, and I liked you know, there to be a real storyline that we're following. And you know, what better than a competition? I know it's kind of simplistic in a sense that, like, people want to win a competition, but it just gives a hook that and an energy to a film, and it just means more is at stake. So that definitely was yeah, definitely the kind of glue of the narrative. But through that prism, we can, venture into different aspects of the sport. And God, there's just so much to pigeons. Like there's so much you can make a whole film about how pigeon racing works, because there's. But we didn't want it to feel like a boring instructional DVD for television. So we kind of had to like give the audience just enough details for them to like understand it, like in a succinct way. But yeah, it was a balancing act there, because sometimes you wouldn't give them enough information and people would be confused, and then other times, yeah, just drag. So I hope it just about the right amount.
And in terms of things that we learned, but also you must have learned along the way, just seeing how the prices of the pigeons kind of went through the roof. And then I guess there are also kind of the animal rights considerations. The fact that quite a lot of the pigeons don't make it. I mean, were there any things that kind of shocked you, or you were taken aback by in the making of
it? Yeah, both those things. I mean, that was really one of the reasons why I thought it was the right time to make this film, was because when I started, it was a 4-year process. So when I started dipping into the world of pigeon racing, it was like most expensive pigeon in the world was 300 grand, and at the time I finished it, it was nearly 2 million. So you can see the upwards trajectory in price, and it's all coming from the Chinese really, and there's a underground scene out there where there's a lot of wealthy people involved and a lot of gambling, and they want pigeons from Belgium, and it's just erupted the industry, and a lot of people got very rich from it, but a lot of people at the same time have been kind of squeezed out price wise, because everything just goes up. So that was definitely a factor. And then yeah, the animal rights thing, I mean, it's sad to see like any kind of race where a lot of pigeons either generally with racing though, like they tend to like they don't make it home, so it means they're not like dead necessarily. They're just like out there, street pigeons now, and they might even make it back like a year later, 8 years later even. It's crazy. Like there's so many stories about that. So yeah, that can happen. But probably with these bigger races that we're following, the problem is that you're getting pigeons from all over the world, so disease can wipe out a lot of them. So it goes down to the race whether they can some people have learned a lot, I suppose. It's like they literally have social distancing for pigeons. They bring them into quarantine and keep them away from each other. But if you throw them all together and they're running around, and someone has a sick pigeon and they're not used to that immune system, suddenly you can have lots of pigeons dying, and that's not a good thing for the sport.
And ultimately, what do you hope people take away from watching your film? Because like you say, there's kind of so many elements, there is comedy, there is drama, but you can also sort of take some other themes from it. Is this kind of a microcosm of what happens, in terms of capitalism and that kind of gaping gap between the have and the have-nots, and the sort of rich elite kind of co-opting the whole sport. So there's lots of things that you can perhaps take away from watching
it. Yeah, I'd like to kind of draw some of those analogies, certainly. If you kind of observe sometimes, there's the characters who maybe have more money, you don't see them get their hands dirty as much, and then the ones who just kind of doing everything themselves, they're so busy, and so you can just tell that their life balance is skewed. So yeah, there's definitely kind of maybe a reflection of the modern world there. But like ultimately, I think it's it's an entertaining film. It is a good laugh, and I hope like it does genuinely just change a little your impression of what a pigeon is, because they're a ubiquitous creature, obviously, but they're also like the first ever domesticated bird. They've been around for centuries. It's this old tradition, which is our first ever email was essentially the pigeon. They delivered the first ever message for the Olympic Games. So there's a long history with humans and pigeons, and that tradition is ultimately being kept alive by this collection of characters.
Mhm.
Although like animal rights might want pigeon racing to end, I do disagree. I think with greyhounds it's a different story, but with pigeon racing, I mean, when you release the pigeon, they are free. So yeah, I think it's just a cool fading art, and you know, so you might pick up lots of nuggets of information that you it might help you in a pub quiz. Who knows?
And then just finally, you know, obviously we were saying at the beginning there, you know, doing these documentaries about Conor McGregor and Liam Gallagher. Now you've gone to this. How do you kind of reflect on what you've done so far, and what might you do next?
Yeah, I suppose just want to keep developing. You know, not doing the same thing. So yeah, it's like the first couple of films I made, like the biggest names probably that I'll ever touch. I don't know. But like, so you know, I am interested in sport, but I want to, you know, keep making, you know, more original topics as well. They're harder to sell, you know, like it took a long time to make this film. I'm sure lots of documentary filmmakers will have the same lifespan of a film. So yeah, they do take time. So you gotta find subject matters which really you love and you believe in. So so just keep doing that and try to make just change it up. You know, I think just do something that you know isn't unexpected, something unexpected.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us. I can't wait for everyone else to see this wonderful documentary. Thanks so much.
Really appreciate the interview and the time.